Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And I have done a number of videos on nymphing technique, both contact nymphing and nymphing under an indicator. And I thought it probably would be a good idea if I did a video of the 10 top tips for nymphing. So sort of bring all of them together into one video. I thought it might be useful for people starting out on how to nymph, because there's certain key things we should concentrate on that make our life easy. So let's get started with the first one. Identifying good water for nymphing is not actually all that difficult. Nymphing water, good nymphing water, is typified by a strong current going down the middle of a run, seams on either side, and then soft water on either side. So it's like fast, medium, slow. And you've got that breakdown as you cross over the run. You can see it on both sides quite often. And often it's typified by a foam line, a natural foam line going right down the middle of the run. So you can see the heart of the run with the foam line. That's what you typically see in a good nymphing run. You've got depth there, you've got some structure, some rocks, some boulders. The things that fish need, they need protection, they need cover, they need current breaks, but they also want that conveyor belt of current that brings food to them. Remember, a trout doesn't go chasing all over the river for food. I mean, there's very few calories in a bug, so they are not going to go very far for one. They want the river to bring the food to them. So they're sitting in one spot and they'll move a little distance to get a fish. So we have to look at that water and say, where are those fish going to be and where is the best feeding lie for them? Because they'll sit in these feeding lies, usually slower, softer water, moving into the fast water to get an insect and coming back. Now that softer water can just be behind a rock right in the middle of the run, or it can be in the seam, so they can be sitting just on the soft side of the seam, and they'll move out to into the faster water to grab a bug, and then it'll drop right back down again. So what you're looking for is that structure where you've got soft water, medium water, fast water, medium water, soft water, that classic run. Now, that's only one place you're likely to find fish. You'll also find fish in water that looks rather nondescript, but there is current there. There is current lines, which you can often see with foam. There's deeper pockets, slots. All these things can hold fish. So I see a lot of people hit the main runs, the ones that are obvious, and they don't go after all these other smaller features. So anytime you're seeing a combination of current that's concentrated, that will bring food to the fish, and you've got some depth and you've got some structure, you're likely to be able to nymph fish it. Now, some types of water are more easily fished with an indicator rig, and others you might want to use contact nymphing. So it helps to know both, so you're able to tackle both. But nevertheless, if you have the ability to spot where you think those fish are going to be holding, that's going to make a huge difference in your success rate. So let's look at the next one. When we approach a typical run, we want to make sure we cover that water thoroughly. Now, like I said, fish don't move very far. They'll be sitting behind their little rock, they see a bug, they move out and take it, come back down again. If that bug's way over here, they're not going to take it. So when you are nymph fishing, you cannot see the fish usually. Sometimes you can, but most of the times you can't. I mean, sometimes you get these exceptionally clear streams where you can see the fish. But on the waters I fish, you don't see them. Okay, so when you're not able to see the fish, you want to be able to start fishing in a methodical fashion. So you fish the water close to you, and then a little further away, a little further away, a little further away. And then once you've covered across the run, then you move downstream to start again. And that process of moving downstream, you want to have some overlap between those two areas that you're covering. So the old stuff and the new stuff, you want some overlap. And then you keep moving down. Now in contact nymphing, sometimes they move upstream. So you can take the same approach. But the idea is we methodically cover the run from the water close to us to the water further away, and then we either move upstream or we move downstream and repeat the process. And so by the time we're finished the run, we have run our nymph through every window that every fish in that run was likely to have. So we have a good shot at putting our fly in within the window that the fish will move to intercept it. And it doesn't hurt to do it once or twice or 3 times with that window as well. They don't always take it on the first pass. So remember, cover water. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, this is something I see a lot, and people should be aware of it, is fish the water in front of you before you go charging off into the main part of the run. We see that nice juicy run with the foam line, and we want to go, oh yeah, let's get to that foam line and fish that run. But often that moderate flow that's between you and the foam line often has fish too. So to go charging through that water to fish the foam line can often result in you missing a whole bunch of fish because you've spooked them out of the run. And when you spook fish, sometimes it has effect on other fish in the run as well. So when one fish suddenly flees, another fish sees it, goes, oh, I better hunker down, there's something up there. So you may actually be putting fish down if you go charging into that intermediate flow. And to say, and you're also going to miss an opportunity of taking some fish. So make some passes through that before you walk over to the run or wade over to the run. So fish the water in front of you first. Now, depth management can be a problem for people starting out. There's rules of thumb like your fly should be 1.5 times the depth of the water between the fly and the indicator is 1.5 times the depth of the water. That's kind of a rule of thumb, but it doesn't always work. It depends on the current speed. In slow currents, you won't want to do that. You'll be hanging up all the time. In fast currents, you may not be close to the bottom. So, you know, rules of thumb only work reasonably well. Is a simpler way to assess whether you're at the right depth or not. If you do not touch bottom at all, so your fly goes down the run and you never ever feel bottom, you make pass after pass after pass, you don't ever touch bottom, your fly's way too high. If you make pass, snag, oh, make a pass, snag, and you're constantly tack, 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 tack on the bottom, and you're snagging up all the time, you're running too deep. The Goldilocks zone is that occasional tick, doink, doink, doink. You hit that odd rock here and there, maybe you'll snag up once or twice, but that's what you're looking for, is that you're just hitting the occasional rock. When you're down there, that's the ideal depth. So once you've been at this for a while, you'll be able to assess depth and assess where to put the indicator or how to manage the angle on your nymphs if you're contact nymphing. You get to that stage once you've spent some time there. But when you first start out, just that occasional ticking of the bottom is what you need to tell you that you're at the right depth. Now you're going to hear this phrase a lot, dead drift. And what that means is the fly moves at the speed of the current. And that can be a challenge for people starting out. They often have a lot of what we call drag on the fly, which means the fly is being pulled. It's either being pulled by the fly line, the current has grabbed the fly line and dragging it downstream, or the person is moving the fly rod and that's moving the fly as well. What we want is a natural dead drift. The other challenge we get with natural dead drifting is sometimes the current at the surface is a lot faster than the current down below because of the bottom friction of all the rocks. So it pays to watch that and see if you can tell if there's much current difference. But generally speaking, the easiest way when starting out is have your indicator move at the speed of the foam line. So you see some foam in the water, your indicator should match the foam. So this piece of foam, there's your indicator, and they should go down the current together. And that requires some mending to do that. I explain mending in another video. And so basically what you're trying to achieve is that dead drift where the fly just goes down with the current. Now I'm just going to contradict what I just said. some nymphs swim. They move around. They emerge. They're not always dead drifting. So if you make a few passes through a run, you're not getting any hits, try moving the fly. Give it some life and see what happens. I often find that fish, when I'm not having much success with the dead drift, fish start hitting it when the fly moves. And very common as I'm coming down my drift and it starts to swing out at the end, and that means the fly starts to lift. That looks like a fly that's starting to emerge, and that's when they hit it. Now there's something called a lasering lift, which is you lift the fly and you drop it. You lift the fly and you drop it when it's at the end of the run, at the end of the drift. And that's doing exactly that. It's imitating that up and down motion that mayflies often do. When their skin fills with gas, they go up to the surface and they try to swim back down again. So if you're able to mimic that, you'll often get fish when the dead drift didn't work. Fly choice can be a pain for people starting out. What should they be using? Well, I look at three basic nymphs. You want to have a pheasant tail. I mean, I have thousands and thousands and thousands of fish have been caught on pheasant tails. It imitates so many different kinds of species of nymph and does such a great job. So get out there with the pheasant tail. Gold rib hare's ear. That's another one that is just a dynamite pattern that has caught thousands and thousands of fish. And that, between those two, you've got your mayflies covered, because the gold rib hare's ear is sort of a swimming nymph style, and the pheasant tail is more of a crawler nymph style. So you've got those two main types of mayfly nymphs covered with those two flies. And the last one is an olive caddis. I mean, there's a lot of different caddis in the water, and they can come in a variety of colors, but olive covers a bunch of them. So you can go typical olive, maybe a light and a dark, and boy, you can cover a lot of water with just an olive caddis. Okay, this is this is one where a lot of people get tripped up. Size matters, and I'm not being smart-ass with this. It's serious. In the heart of the mayfly season, you know, in that April, May, June area, what you've got coming off is the largest nymphs that you're likely to see, the nymphs that are ready to hatch into adults. They're at their largest size at that moment. So you're going to be fishing 16s, 14s, 12s, maybe even 10s, size 10 nymphs at that time of year, because those nymphs are at their largest. Now, typically mayflies live for about 2 years. So after all these big nymphs have, you know, hatched and mated, laid eggs, died, all that's left in the water is last year's nymphs, the ones that were laid, the eggs were laid last year. These are much smaller than the nymphs that you've just been fishing in the heart of the season. So if you're fishing in July, August, September, you're going to be fishing much smaller nymphs to imitate. For example, if you're dealing with, let's say, a sulfur nymph, as an example, you'd be fishing, say, a size 14 in June, and you'd be fishing like a size 18 in August for that same nymph, because those nymphs are still there. You know, they were laid last year. The eggs were laid last year. They've grown into, say, a size 18, size 20, and the following spring they'll be a size 14. So remember, once you get past the heart of the mayfly season, and this is true for caddis as well, then you want to drop down in size. You're looking at, you know, 16s, 18s, 20s, 22s to deal with those smaller insects. Plus, you've also got coming off blue-winged olives and tricos at that time of year, and they're small. So go small as soon as you get past the heart of the season. This is true for contact nymphing, but it's also true for indicator fishing. Stay in contact with the fly. Don't allow slack line between you and the fly. When you're contact nymphing, that means you're basically a straight line from your rod tip to the fly. If you're indicator fishing, it means basically a straight line, as close to a straight line as possible from your rod tip to the indicator. We don't want a lot of wiggly slack line on the water. One of the problems will be the fact that you will not be able to move that line quickly enough for when a fish, you see your indicator drop when a fish takes a fly. And of course with contact nymphing, if you're not in contact with the fly, you won't know the fish has taken it. They'll pick it up, spit it out, and you won't be aware of it at all. Stay in contact with the fly. Keep that line as straight as possible, either to the fly or to the indicator. So when a fish hits, A, you'll know it, and B, you'll be able to set the hook. Which brings me to the last point. Set the hook when something happens. When you feel something or you see that indicator move, don't go, oh, it must have been a rock, I won't bother. No. When you set the hook, it's a sideways set and you're going downstream because the fish are pointing upstream. When you go downstream, you're pulling the hook into the scissor of the mouth. You don't want to go upstream with the hook set because you're pulling the fly away from the fish, and the same thing if you go up. So that downstream sideways hook set will move the hook into the scissor of the jaw of the fish. The other thing is you don't do a massive hook set. It's just a little movement of the, all you have to do is move the rod tip a little bit, downstream and sideways, and you'll set the hook if the fish is on the end of it. Now, I mentioned this when I first started contact nymphing about 20 years ago. I often would catch fish. I'd hook fish, and I would just set the hook, and I don't know why I did it. I mean, there was nothing was communicated to me that there was a fish there. Happened over and over again. I would just suddenly move the rod and there'd be a fish there. So your subconscious often picks up on things that your conscious mind doesn't. So just, you know, we can say the zen, the zone, be whatever. But if you're paying attention to what you're doing, you'd be surprised what you pick up. And you'll hook fish, sometimes you'll surprise yourself. So don't just assume that that little twitch of the indicator was just bouncing over a rock. Give it that little motion, that little pull, and just to check to see if there's a fish there, and then drop it back and let it continue on its way. And the same thing with contact nymphing. Don't assume that it's a rock. Set the hook. You'd be surprised how often it's a fish. Okay, there's the 10 tips. I think those, if you take those and apply them to your nymph fishing, you can do really well. It takes some of the mystery out of it. It's common sense, really. It's easy stuff. You know, that's what you really want to do when you get out on the water and you're starting to fish with nymphs for the first time, is don't complicate it. Keep it simple and just stay in contact, set the hook, use generic flies, read the water well, and you'll catch fish. Cheers.